The year was 1943. Across the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Pacific, American forces clawed their way from island to island, each victory bought with blood and sweat. On a remote, sun-baked outpost, a desperate defense was underway. Japanese Zeros screamed from the sky, their machine guns spitting death. Amidst the chaos, a lone gunner braced himself behind a strange, ungainly weapon, a contraption dismissed by many as a fool's errand, a mail-order joke. The enemy closed in, their victory seemingly assured. But what happened next defied all expectations. A moment etched into the annals of war, proving that ingenuity could turn the tide. Elias Vance, a man whose hands bore the indelible marks of a lifetime spent tinkering, watched the newsreels from his small Ohio home with a gnawing frustration. At 48, with a receding hairline and spectacles perched on his nose, he was no soldier, but the attack on Pearl Harbor had ignited a fire within him. His son Thomas, a fresh-faced sailor barely out of high school, was somewhere in the vast Pacific, and Elias felt a profound, almost unbearable need to contribute, to protect. He was a self-taught engineer, a mechanic by trade, whose garage in rural Ohio was a sanctuary of gears, springs, and half-finished inventions. The official military report spoke of the overwhelming superiority of Japanese aircraft, the desperate need for more effective anti-aircraft defenses. Elias believed the answer lay not in complex years-long development cycles, but in American ingenuity, in the pragmatic spirit that built Detroit's assembly lines. He envisioned a rapid-fire, high-caliber anti-aircraft weapon, one that could be manufactured quickly and deployed easily, utilizing readily available industrial components. He spent countless nights hunched over blueprints, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and machine oil. His design was unconventional, eschewing the heavy, complex recoil systems of traditional artillery for a simpler, more robust mechanism that maximized rate of fire. He called it the Vance Rapid-Fire Autocannon, though his wife, Martha, affectionately dubbed it Elias's Folly. She worried about his health, the dark circles under his eyes, but she understood the quiet desperation driving him. The clang of his hammer against steel, the whine of his lathe, became the soundtrack of their lives. When he finally completed his detailed plans and a small-scale working model, he sent them to the War Department. The response was swift and dismissive, not regulation, untested, amateurish, mail-order junk. The bureaucracy, steeped in tradition and rigid procurement processes, saw only a civilian's naive attempt to meddle in military affairs. Elias felt a familiar sting of rejection, but his resolve only hardened. He wouldn't be deterred. He poured his life savings into building a full-scale prototype in his garage, transforming it into a makeshift factory. The smell of welding fumes mingled with the scent of Martha's apple pie. He worked tirelessly, driven by the image of his son's face, by the countless other young men fighting and dying. A glimmer of hope arrived unexpectedly. Lieutenant Commander Thomas Mac McMillan, a pragmatic, open-minded logistics officer from Boston, stationed at a supply depot in California, heard whispers of Elias's invention through an old college friend who worked at a local armory. McMillan, 32, was tired of the endless red tape and the slow pace of official development. He saw potential in the autocannon's raw power and its surprising simplicity. He arranged a clandestine demonstration at a remote firing range in the Mojave Desert. The desert wind whipped dust around them as Elias, his hands trembling slightly, loaded the strange weapon. When it roared to life, spitting a torrent of heavy rounds with a deafening staccato, McMillan felt a jolt of excitement. This wasn't just a gun, it was a statement. The challenge now was immense. How to get this unauthorized, untested, mail-order weapon to the front lines, past the entrenched skepticism of the military establishment, and into the hands of the men who desperately needed it. Lieutenant Commander Macmillan, a man known for his tenacity as much as his Bostonian wit, embarked on a bureaucratic odyssey. He pulled every string, called in every favor, and navigated a labyrinth of red tape that would have broken a lesser man. He argued with skeptical generals, presented Elias Vance's meticulously drawn schematics, and even arranged for a second, more official demonstration. The weapon, now unofficially dubbed Vance's Vengeance by a few daring junior officers, was a hard sell. It didn't fit any existing category, wasn't manufactured by a major defense contractor, and its inventor was a civilian mechanic from Ohio. Yet Macmillan's persistence, coupled with the dire reports from the Pacific about overwhelming Japanese air superiority, finally swayed a reluctant general. A single prototype was authorized for field evaluation in a non-critical sector. The autocannon was crated and loaded onto a cargo ship bound for the Pacific. The journey was arduous, a testament to the vastness of the war. Weeks turned into months as the ship plied the sun-drenched, submarine-infested waters. The heat in the cargo hold was oppressive, the air thick with the smell of diesel and salt. Macmillan, accompanying the precious cargo, felt the weight of expectation and the immense responsibility. He knew that if Vance's Vengeance failed, his career, and perhaps Elias Vance's reputation, would be over. It finally arrived at a remote, under-defended island outpost in the Solomon Islands chain, a small airbase known as Eagle's Nest. The island was a strategic speck, constantly under threat from Japanese air raids targeting supply lines. The existing anti-aircraft defenses were meager, mostly aging Bofors and Oerlikons, often overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and aggressive tactics of the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service. The gun crew, assigned to the experimental weapon, viewed it with a mixture of suspicion and dark humor. Sergeant Frank Dusty Rhodes, 24, from the dusty plains of West Texas, was a seasoned machine gunner, cynical but fiercely loyal to his men. He'd seen too many miracle weapons fail. Private Billy "Kid" Jensen, 19, fresh out of basic training from the bustling streets of Los Angeles, was eager to prove himself but terrified by the constant drone of distant aircraft, a chilling prelude to the raids. They were assigned to Vance's Folly, almost as a punishment, or perhaps a joke by the higher-ups. Setting up the autocannon was a challenge. It was unconventional, requiring different handling, different aiming techniques than anything they'd ever encountered. The instruction manual, hastily written by Elias himself, was a far cry from official military doctrine. The crew struggled, sweat stinging their eyes in the oppressive humidity, mosquitoes relentless in their assault. They doubted its effectiveness, grumbling about its strange appearance and the lack of proper training. The officers on Eagle's Nest still viewed it with suspicion, preferring their standard, albeit less effective, equipment. The constant threat of Japanese raids hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that made every man jumpy. The smell of fear and sweat was a constant companion. They were vulnerable, and this strange, untested weapon was their last, desperate hope. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on Eagle's Nest, baking the airstrip and turning the jungle into a steaming cauldron. Suddenly, the distant drone, a sound that had become synonymous with dread, grew louder, more insistent. "Air raid! Air raid!" The cry echoed across the base, sending men scrambling to their positions. Japanese Zeros and Betty bombers, a formidable formation, descended from the azure sky, their engines screaming a prelude to destruction. The sky quickly filled with the angry red traces of conventional anti-air guns, punctuated by the concussive blasts of bombs hitting the runway and supply dumps. The island was taking heavy hits, the standard defenses struggling to cope with the coordinated assault. Sergeant Dusty Rhodes, his face grim, barked orders at his crew. Private Billy Jensen, his young face pale with fear, fumbled with the heavy ammunition belts. The Vance's Vengeance, positioned almost as an afterthought on a slightly elevated mound near the perimeter, seemed an unlikely savior. "Load it up, kid. Let's see what this mail-order marvel can do," Dusty yelled over the din, a hint of his usual cynicism still present, but overshadowed by the raw adrenaline of combat. As the first wave of Zeros peeled off for a strafing run, Dusty sighted down the unconventional barrel. The gun, with its unique, almost agricultural-looking firing mechanism, felt alien in his hands. He squeezed the trigger. Instead of the familiar rhythmic thud of a 50 cal, the Vance's Vengeance unleashed a guttural roar, a continuous rapid-fire torrent of heavy shells. The sound was different, more ferocious, more relentless than anything they had heard. The recoil was surprisingly manageable, absorbed by Elias's ingenious design. Then, the impossible happened. A Zero, banking sharply, flew directly into the path of the autocannon's fire. It didn't just smoke, it disintegrated in a fiery explosion, tumbling out of the sky. Dusty, momentarily stunned, quickly reacquired another target. Another Zero, then a lumbering Betty bomber fell from the sky, their rigid formations breaking under the unexpected ferocity of the fire. The crew, initially fumbling, found their rhythm. Billy, his fear replaced by a focused intensity, fed the ammunition belts with practiced speed. The gun proved incredibly accurate, its high rate of fire creating a wall of steel that the Japanese pilots, accustomed to predictable anti-air patterns, simply couldn't penetrate. In a span of just 5 minutes, amidst the chaos and the deafening roar of battle, the Vance's Vengeance tore through the Japanese formation. 11 confirmed kills. The sky, moments ago filled with enemy aircraft, was now dotted with plumes of black smoke and falling debris. The remaining Japanese planes, their attack disrupted, their pilots bewildered by this new, devastating weapon, retreated in confusion, their mission a costly failure. The silence that followed the raid was deafening, broken only by the crackle of burning wreckage and the distant cries of medics. Dusty and his crew, covered in sweat and cordite, stood stunned, exhausted but exhilarated. The officers who had scoffed now stared in disbelief, their jaws slack. Lieutenant Commander Macmillan arrived, a grim, triumphant smile on his face. The mail-order gun, once a joke, was now Eagle's Nest's most prized possession, a testament to an ordinary man's extraordinary vision. Japanese intelligence reports, intercepted days later, spoke of a new, terrifying American weapon, its capabilities baffling their rigid doctrine. News of the Vance's Vengeance spread like wildfire through the Pacific theater, carried by hushed whispers and official dispatches. The story of the remote outpost, the desperate defense, and the improbable weapon that turned the tide became a legend. Demand for the autocannons skyrocketed. Back in Ohio, Elias Vance, still in his garage, was suddenly a national hero. Telegrams and phone calls flooded his modest home. The War Department, once dismissive, now lauded his ingenuity. Detroit factories, initially resistant to retooling for an unconventional weapon, were now working around the clock, their massive assembly lines humming with renewed purpose, churning out Vance's Vengeance units by the thousands. The mail-order gun had become a powerful symbol of American industrial improvisation and the indomitable can-do spirit. The impact on the war effort was immediate and profound. While the Vance's Vengeance didn't single-handedly win the war, it filled a crucial gap in Allied defenses, particularly in remote outposts and on newly captured islands where traditional heavy anti-aircraft batteries were slow to deploy. The Japanese, initially perplexed by this new, devastating weapon, were forced to adapt their aerial tactics, making their raids less effective and more costly. The element of surprise, once their greatest asset, was now often met with a torrent of unexpected fire. This tactical shift contributed significantly to the Allied air superiority in key engagements, saving countless lives and vital equipment. Elias Vance, the quiet inventor, found himself thrust into the national spotlight. He visited the sprawling factories, his eyes wide with wonder as he saw thousands of workers, men and women, meticulously assembling his design. He met soldiers returning from the front, heard their harrowing stories, and saw the gratitude in their eyes. The personal cost of his relentless work was evident. His health had deteriorated, his frame thinner, his face etched with fatigue, but his spirit remained unbroken. He often thought of his son, Thomas, still out there, fighting. He hoped his invention was making a difference for him, for all of them. The Vance's vengeance never fully replaced the established anti-aircraft systems, but its legacy endured. It influenced future weapon design, emphasizing adaptability, rapid deployment, and the power of unconventional thinking. It became a testament to the idea that innovation could spring from anywhere, not just from government labs or corporate giants. After the war, Elias Vance returned to his quiet life in Ohio, forever changed by the crucible of conflict. His invention, once a ridiculed mail-order gun, became a vital, if often overlooked, footnote in military history. The story of the ordinary man who built an extraordinary weapon, proving that American ingenuity, fueled by determination and a deep love for country, could overcome even the most rigid doctrines and turn the tide of battle. Dive deeper into the untold stories of Butu innovation. What other overlooked inventions turned the tide? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more gripping historical narratives, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of American ingenuity and resilience. Your support helps us uncover these incredible tales.